I need a Jujutsu Kaisen fighting game. Let me be clear, I don't mean a Ninja Storm, Hinokami Chronicles, Budokai Jump Force, or Xenoverse type arena fighting game. I mean a classic 2D anime fighting game. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying those games are bad, I actually quite enjoy them. But Dragon Ball FighterZ revolutionized what it meant to make an anime fighting game based on an established IP. Its flashy combat, accessibility to new players, and collective hype by two different communities of people made it a surefire success. And with rollback netcode on the way, more and more fans keep pouring in, making this one of the most popular fighting games, not just on the market, but ever. While I'm sure it's only a matter of time before a sequel is announced, I've started thinking about what other IPs would be perfect for an anime fighting game. And then it hit me, as I looked 2 inches down to the left. While I'm a big fan of the fighting game community, or the FGC for short, I'm an even bigger fan of the anime-manga Jujutsu Kaisen. It's my favorite current-gen shonen anime, and it's one of the 2 manga I'm actually reading week to week next to Chainsaw Man. The fight scenes are flashy, the powers are cool and complex, and the characters just ooze style. If that doesn't sound like a third of the recipe for a fighting game, I don't know what does. So I think if you put these 2 things together, a Jujutsu Kaisen fighting game would absolutely slap. Recently, fighting games have been my favorite type of competitive esports. I've been trying to expand my knowledge of fighting games by watching videos and playing the ones that I can get my hands on and watching matches of the ones I can't. I've never really been an esports guy in the first place, but I cannot deny the absolute hype fighting games make me feel. When I watch players on the pro scene create seemingly impossible combos or hitting perfect one-frame links like they could do it in their sleep, it fires off chemicals in my brain and turns me into a zombie who puts on Street Fighter V only to have my ass kicked in ranked for the 95th time as a rookie. But nevertheless, I persevere, and I kept studying and training myself to be better. That's literally what shonen battle anime is, just in anime form. I mean, that's why anime fighting games are technically its own category at this point. The 2 just blend together seamlessly. But that brings up another point. Why specifically Jujutsu Kaisen? There are countless battle shonen, both old and new, that don't have fighting games. So why specifically this one? Well, let me try to convince you, starting with the style of what I'd like it to be like. For those who don't play fighting games, or those who don't know the difference between different fighting games, the fighting game glossary refers to an anime fighting game as a particular style of fighting game that employs frantic, high aerial-based combat and wild character designs, often drawn with a Japanese anime aesthetic. There are many popular anime fighting games on the market, from original properties like Guilty Gear or Under Night and Birth, to famous licensed IPs like Dragon Ball FighterZ. Fans of anime games typically like them because they promote high degrees of creativity and decision making, and often have strange and interesting character designs. So a lot of the ideas I have for this game will take inspiration from the aforementioned Guilty Gear and Dragon Ball FighterZ, along with stuff from Marvel vs. Capcom and even Project L, Riot Games' upcoming intro to the FGC. Before I get started, I gotta apologize. I'm gonna reference FighterZ a lot, but that's what inspired me to make this video, and it is my video, so you can debate me in the comments about mechanics however you want, but I'm gonna say this shit with my chest. I love the cel-shaded look and jagged frame rate motion of FighterZ. As someone who reads and has deeply researched the fight scenes in Jujutsu Kaisen, I know that this art style depicts Akutami's vision in some ways better than even Mappa does. Big, flashy particle effects, motion blurs, and pencil mark-like streaks are all the things that make JJK as a manga so beautiful to look at. Now, if you know anything about fighting games, a giant part of these games is style. Fighting games as a video game are pretty straightforward. It's just a few characters on a screen duking it out. But that's what allows the art direction to really shine. Things gotta look pretty, and luckily for us, Akutami loves to add their little flavors of style to their art. Characters could have multiple outfits that come from the anime, the manga, and even promotional art. I want these outfits specifically. And maybe down the line, DLC packs can give some characters certain manga looks. Also, Akutami, a true student of the mangakas who came before them, is first and foremost a fan of the art form. And you can tell they're a fan JJK is about subverting and building on shonen tropes, but you can tell that they particularly borrowed a lot from Tite Kubo's Bleach. In the panels of both mangas, both mangakas tell us small details about each characters, most noticeably, their favorite songs. I think it would be a cool thing to emulate these songs into the game. Obviously we can't have the actual songs playing because that would be a copyright nightmare, but playing distinct music or even music cues during a super adds a little bit of spice that goes a long way. And this goes further with the stages. In order to keep it grounded in reality, most of the fights in Jujutsu Kaisen take place in modern day locations in Japan. Stages could vary from the abandoned buildings in Roppongi to the depths of the Shibuya station. The series also has its fair share of original locations, most noticeably Jujutsu Tech and the Kyoto Sister School. Now, we haven't really seen much of the Kyoto Sister School, but this is where great art direction advice and blessing can come from Akutami. This would allow fans of the series to see something they've never really seen before. And just imagine the different locations from the series. Stages that take place from the top of buildings in Shibuya to underground fight clubs, and perhaps a whole ass crater. They could even utilize stage breaks where hitting someone with a super could switch the stage. Like, could you imagine you're fighting in the forest surrounding Jujutsu Tech, and you hit someone with a super while having them cornered, and then a cutscene plays where you're flying across the screen, and then suddenly you're on the cobble steps of the campus. Or we can borrow from Fighter Z again, and if certain characters are playing on a certain stage, we can have dramatic finishes where a cutscene will play that emulates the scene from the anime. Imagine a battle between Eso and Itadori on the forest freeway, and after the fight, a cutscene plays where it's Kugisaki using the cursed doll and Itadori hitting with that final punch. You see a flash of blue, the screen turns white, and 2 words flash across the screen. Come on, wouldn't that shit be so sick? Not to mention character intros and fights could have some downright cool ass lines. Like, you can have your classic Itadori versus Mahito interaction where Itadori will say something about Junpei, but imagine a matchup between 2 characters who haven't met, like Sukuna and Yuta. Imagine a line where Sukuna gets excited because he gets to fight someone who's apparently on the same level as Gojo, and then Yuta can hit him back with a, "I'm not afraid to kill those who threaten my friends," or "I'll kill you, and I'll save Itadori." The possibilities are endless, and people would get so hype over those. Oh, and speaking of characters, let's talk about the character roster, and a few examples of how I think certain characters would work specifically. So having enough variety in characters is by no means a problem for Jujutsu Kaisen. Let's say in this hypothetical game we'll only use characters who we've seen fight in just the anime and the movie. That leaves us roughly with a roster of 28 characters, give or take. If anything, we might have too many characters. Still not a bad thing to have, so let's use our main 3 and Gojo as an example, cause I know someone out there is gonna send me death threats if I don't at least talk about Gojo. Itadori, even in the show, is basically a Shoto fighter. I mean, most characters in the show use weapons, and he is specifically tailored to use his fists, so it works out. Maybe instead of fireballs, we could see him punch blue blasts and call them cursed energy blasts, or something. He's your classic protagonist who's easy for new characters to get used to and really good for pros to use. Your sole bad guy, if you will. Now, for his specials, he can do a delayed cursed energy uppercut, which can be your Shoryuken dupe. For his super, I'd like to take multiple inspirations. I think it could be like a multi-hit special where the animation starts with Itadori from this specific shot, and then it goes into a multi-hit combo where his last hit obliterates you with cursed energy. Oh, and I know what some of you are already thinking. Nah, his super should just be a black flash. I thought the same thing too, but I think that there's a way to actually make black flashes a mechanic in the game. Going on to Kugisaki and Fushiguro, I think that they should be 2 different types of zoners. Fushiguro can use his Shikigami, and Kugisaki can use her nails. For Fushiguro, his specials can revolve around attacks using Nue or the Divine Dog, and for Kugisaki, she can have multiple attacks that utilize the explosion that comes from her nails with Hairpin. As for supers, Fushiguro obviously can have his incomplete domain. And for Kugisaki, I want to straight up just have a faster variation of this scene. Gojo is going to be our big Unga Bunga character, perhaps similar to UI Goku, ignoring people's offense and pulling off moves that are stupidly hard to read and punish. You know, in true Gojo fashion. His projectile special will be a hollow red, and then his super will be a hollow purple. Honestly, I don't have a reason why his super shouldn't be his domain expansion other than the fact that that shit, quite frankly, is too overpowered. Okay, I know I'd say I'd only use those characters, but Yuta Okatsu is my favorite Jujutsu Kaisen character, so I'm gonna tell y'all how I think he should work. So those who know Jujutsu Kaisen and Jujutsu Kaisen 0, you know it's not just Yuta. It's Yuta and Rika. I think that they should work a lot like Mei in Guilty Gear Strive. Yuta in the manga is described to be a power type despite his small stature. This is due to his immense amount of cursed energy. So, like Mei, I think he should be a very aggressive character with a lot of supers leaving him plus on block. This also means giving him a hard time with characters who can zone with projectiles and giving him limited defense maneuvers. I think he can have a projectile that's a form of lesser cursed speech that does small damage, and then another special could be a command grab that has Rika grabbing the enemy and slamming them back and forth. For his super, it should 100% be Rika's final attack. We can even have some whack-ass startup animation where it alludes to Yuta kissing Rika, because if there's one thing about Yuta, he loves kissing his cursed spirits. And the ideas just keep flowing because every Jujutsu Kaisen character falls into a fighting game character archetype without too much fuss. And for the FGC members who check out this game who aren't fans of the series, I have no doubt it'll be hard to find a main because there's just so much variety. And don't worry, I know that I've been talking about this more through the lens of a JJK fan, but let's talk about the mechanics I think I would like to see in the game and what would make it a fun fighting game. Since this is an anime fighting game, I think this would suit best as a 3v3 support character based fighting game. I mean, it's a shonen anime. At the end of the day, it's still about friendship. Things like character assists, tags, and delayed tags just make sense in a property like this. I mean, come on. This is just basically a DHC. It'd just be fun in general creating a team of 3 and trying to figure out your strategy based off of those 3 characters. And curse technique based support options? The possibilities are endless. As I mentioned, Dragon Ball FighterZ is widely renowned for its accessibility with new players. It does this by making use of a concept called auto combos where even just spamming buttons makes it look flashy while also doing decent damage. Pros can also create their own combos while looking even flashier. Personally, I think this concept in some shape or form should be in all fighting games going forward, but I get that's easier said than done in certain fighting games. We're gonna take that concept and drop it into our little pot of Jujutsu Kaisen fighters or whatever, I don't know, I'm not coming up with a name right now. Of course, every fighting game needs its meters. I've gone back and forth on this, but I think I'm going to take inspiration from Marvel vs. Capcom and keep it at a 5-meter bar. And we'll just call it Cursed Energy. So basically it'll just be 1 bar of Cursed Energy for a super. As for movement, this is definitely not where I'm going to take inspiration from Dragon Ball. Movement is going to be standard with simple dashes and air dashes. Some characters may get a triple jump, but nothing fancy. Absolutely no super dashes. Now, I did mention a plan for black flashes, and I think I have kind of an idea figured out. For those who don't know, in Jujutsu Kaisen, a black flash is an attack that distorts space when cursed energy is applied to a blow within 0.1 trillionth of a second of the impact. It leaves opponents absolutely devastated and crippled. Now, it could easily just be a part of certain characters' supers, but the point of the black flash in JJK is that anyone can use it. There's even a specific line in the manga where it says that the black flash does not choose who it blesses. So my idea is that there is a mini black flash meter under your health, and you can use it to basically achieve the same effect as a drive impact from the upcoming Street Fighter 6. Drive impacts are when you use a bar to basically deliver a hit that has 2 armor that lunges forward and leaves a crippling hit. The mechanic itself even looks similar to a black flash. I think it'd be cool when using this effect, instead of that thocky noise that you hear in Street Fighter 6, a mini guitar riff plays like it's represented in the anime. Before I get to the last big mechanic of the game, I want to throw out a few miscellaneous ideas. Story in fighting games usually suck, so I don't really think that there should be an original story. I think it'd be best just to play through the events of the series. There should be your standard arcade mode, as well as an exchange event mode that mixes both battles and minigames, just like the way it does in the series. The lobby should be a chibi version of Jujutsu Tech with different buildings being different modes. And you should be able to create your own chibi Jujutsu Tech student, and you can buy clothes and hairstyles from points you earn in the arcade or even for playing online. Now, with that being that, I want to talk about the last mechanic, how online will work. Online matchmaking is a flaming hot topic in the FGC. A lot of people like how ranking usually goes, with wins earning you points and losses losing you points, which either ranks you up or ranks you down. Personally, I do not like this mechanic. It doesn't seem to gauge matchups well. My current favorite matchmaking comes from Guilty Gear Strive. The tower system is super solid. Moving up to a physical place based on wins and skill makes matchups much closer. Now, here's the cool thing about Jujutsu Kaisen. Ranks already exist in the universe. There's grade 4, grade 3, semi-grade 2, grade 2, semi-grade 1, grade 1, special grade 1, and special grade. Now, we could even have a semi-grade 3, which technically gives us 9 ranks. So all we're doing is borrowing the tower system and just slapping grade on them. The idea of physically qualifying into these grades allows new players to not be stuck in grade 4 for forever, and allows pro players to be actually paired up with people of their same skill set. Hell, we can even have a celestial floor, just call that special grade, and it'll practically function the same. And now that I've explained online, I hope I've at least convinced some of you that this game could be a really fun addition into the FGC. But I also know that I am talking to two different crowds of people, which don't always mix. So why should this game matter to both of these crowds? Why does the FGC deserve a Jujutsu Kaisen fighting game? And why does the Jujutsu Kaisen community and Gege Akutami deserve a fighting game? So while I don't have the honor of saying that I am a longtime fan in the fighting game community, I am a fan no less. While there is definitely still toxic people in our toxic moments, the thrills and chills that our matches have are like nothing to me in esports. Fighting games are without a doubt the coolest competitive games in my opinion. The amount of technique, research, and complex systems that a player has to understand is simply put fucking insane. And then when you pull it off, it actually looks cool and makes sense to people who don't play fighting games. Yeah, there's nothing like it. And in recent years, it feels like we're in some sort of fighting game renaissance, with Street Fighter 6 on the horizon, with not to mention its $1 million first place prize for its next season, and then Tekken 8 after that, and then Dragon Ball FighterZ getting rollback netcode, and then Grand Blue Versus getting rollback netcode. It seems like fighting games are finally back on the menu, and customers are pouring in now more than ever. Which I know isn't exactly the most favorable thing to veterans, but think about it this way. Before a few years ago, the idea of anyone other than Capcom or NRS making a successful fighting game was a laughable dream. But now fighting games seem like a good investment for video game studios. And if we want fighting games to keep evolving, we need to have fresh minds pushing the boundaries of what fighting games can be. I'm not saying they need to change completely, but different people have to try and keep making new fighting games that keep things interesting. And I'm well aware nothing that I mentioned before is exactly new. I just said a few ideas that I feel like could make for a fun fighting game. But I just know that someone out there has the experience as a fighting game fan and a game developer and could do some really cool stuff with the Jujutsu Kaisen fighting game. But again, why this anime? Why specifically this IP? For many of you watching this video, you probably want your favorite anime adapted. I didn't say Jujutsu Kaisen just because it's my favorite new gen anime. Jujutsu Kaisen is literally the best-selling manga of 2022. It is a household name, not just in Japan, but across the globe. It has some form of support by the gigantic fan base it already has. Speaking of the fan base, what is in it for you Jujutsu Kaisen fans out there? For those of you who aren't fighting game fans or video game fans at all, why should you care about a Jujutsu Kaisen fighting game? There's no denying that one of the biggest draws of Jujutsu Kaisen is its fight scenes. Every fight scene in the show just gets better and better. Mixing both crazy animation and a rock and roll soundtrack, these fights feel like they were directed by people who made crazy AMVs in the 2000s. The scenes are hype because they're meant to trigger different chemicals in your brains to fire off, not just the ones that come from cool looking fight scenes. And it's not even like the fight scenes are mid. The show does not shy away from characters just absolutely wailing on each other without remorse, regardless if they're a villain or a hero. And there's only one real way to describe these scenes: rage. This show wants its protagonists, antagonists, and the audience to give into the rage of the fight so that everything feels connected and you can feel the emotion behind each fight. And that's what fighting games become: the rage to beat your opponent, to absolutely lose it and go ape shit with a combo while you're on your last sliver of health. While there are definitely other good fight scenes and perhaps even better fight scenes in other shonen anime, only the fights from Jujutsu Kaisen make me feel the same way that I do when I watch a professional fighting game match. Hell, I'll watch a fight scene from JJK before the gym like it's pre-workout. And I know I'm not the only one. Fans are quick to point out what makes these scenes so cool in both the anime and the manga. So lending your audience the opportunity to channel the rage of both themselves and their character just works. Even if you're not good at fighting games, sitting with a controller in your hand with Itadori on the screen as he beats up Mahito is what we all want to do as justice for Yunpei. It's living out our fantasies, being these characters and not just watching them do cool shit, but actually being the one that makes them do cool shit. But most of all, Jujutsu Kaisen deserves to have moments like this.
Goichi has to win 2 sets coming from the losers in order to beat Sonic Fox. Sonic Fox, however, needs to win 1. So here we go. Oh, that was so loud. Talk to me. That was music to my earlobes.
That was a video from the 2020 EVO Dragon Ball FighterZ tournament. This was the finals. Unprompted, the crowd at EVO created an ear-shattering yell to rival the one Cell was making. The hype was undeniable, and it created an atmosphere for one of the coolest final matches of an esports ever. The idea that someone would do this for Jujutsu Kaisen just genuinely brings a smile to my face. I love these characters and this world. While it's cool to talk about it online and see people at conventions cosplaying, there's like nothing in the world watching a character from your favorite anime causing a crowd of people to collectively join in the rage of the fight. So yes, I'm being a little biased here, but I don't think I'm asking for something impossible. The idea is out there, and you would see me pre-ordering that shit everywhere if it came out. But until then, I'll keep reading my manga wondering why Akutami hates me, and going into ranked Street Fighter V wondering why I hate myself.